This is a weird feeling. I haven't sat down and done a book review in a long time. I feel like my memories of book reviews and wanting to do book reviews with me saying, I'm gonna do a book, I think I'm gonna do a review in this book, I'm gonna do a review and talk about my feelings, and then I never did. I'm gonna try and keep this brief. I'm gonna try and keep it like short. I'm gonna try not to ramble, and hopefully, I mean, I don't have any points. I think from now on when I'm reading books, if I think I'm gonna do a review on them, I mean, I didn't think I was gonna do a review on this book, to be perfectly honest, but if I think I'm gonna do a review on them, I think I might make some notes just to keep track of things, because honestly, my memory, everything just, it goes over my head. But we'll see how this goes. So it might be a mess, it might not. You might never see this. So today, I'm going to talk about Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. Now, I'd been aware of this book for a long time. I remember one time I was doing like a shop on Amazon and I almost bought it, but I think I read the summary. And I remember when, it's so funny, I remember I read the summary, and the summary that I remember, or the impression I got of what the book was about, was completely wrong. I don't know if I just didn't read it properly or if they gave a really weird summary and I was confused. Like, I remember I had an image in my head of what I thought it was going to be like, and it wasn't. And then I remember I looked at a few reviews and they weren't the best, so I was like, oh, so I skipped it and didn't bother. And then obviously I saw the trailer pop up for the no, it's a movie. The movie that like Reese Witherspoon's production company was doing, and I was like, that's what the book's about? That's not the impression I got from it. So I remember I reread the summary in the back and I was like, oh, okay. Somehow I got the complete wrong end of the stick. Anyway, so one day I picked it up. I think I picked it up in the works for like, I don't think I paid as little as £2. It was in like, it was either a £5 or it was under a £5. I don't remember. It sat on my shelf for quite a bit, and then I thought I really wanna, no, I know what it was. My local cinema was getting the movie and I really wanted to see it. So I thought, you know what? I have the book. I'm going to try and read the book before I watch the movie, because I had this debate with somebody not that long ago, or I think I talked about it on Twitter, where I said, like, when it comes to books, movies, I can watch a movie knowing what happens but still enjoy it, because, you know, it's like, it's visually good, and like, you know, even if it's like a mystery and you already know what's happening, like, you can still enjoy the movie knowing what's going to happen. Whereas when it comes to books, I don't enjoy them the same when I already know what's going to happen. Like, it happened to me with The Girl on the Train. I'd seen the movie first and then I read the book, and the whole time, like, the suspense from the book wasn't there because I knew who the killer was and I knew what happened. So I feel like for me with books, it's the suspense of not knowing, which is just what makes a good book for me. So knowing, I'm a bit like, So I think I started reading this one day in like June, July. I went to the beach. It was a beach vlog, and I started reading it, and I read like the first chapter or two while I was at the beach, and then I read it like a couple of times. But then I put out a tweet sort of asking people, like, does this book get better? Like, I can't remember what I said. I was a bit like, I'm really unsure about this book. Like, it's I think I was like 30 pages in. I was a bit like, I don't know about this. And the comments I got were quite mixed. Like, there's people that said, you know, like, give it time, it's actually a really good book. There's people that said, like, it's not like a thriller or anything, it's not that exciting as such. Like, there's not some great, or it's not some real great mystery with twists and turns. Like, it's not really a mystery book. It is more kind of like a character driven story, I guess. Like, it's more about this girl Kaya and just her life living in the marsh. She's the marsh girl. I'm gonna read the plot summary to the back to you anyway, just so you have an understanding of what it's about. For years, rumours of the Marsh Girl have haunted Barclay Cove, a quiet town on the North Carolina coast. So in late 1969, when handsome Chase Andrews is found dead, the locals immediately suspect Kaya Clark, the so-called Marsh Girl. But Kaya is not what they say. Sensitive and intelligent, she has survived for years alone in the marsh she calls home, finding friends in the gulls and lessons in the sand. Then the time comes when she yearns to be loved. When two young men from town become intrigued by her wild beauty, Kaya opens herself to a new life until the unthinkable happens. So yeah, I think the first chapter was about the discovery of Chase's body. Like, it did jump back and forward. It did sort of jump back and forward from, I mean, there was dates, so that was quite nice. It jumped back and forward between like Kaya's early life and the sheriff finding like Chase's body and, you know, doing their chapters, doing their little investigation. Those chapters were quite limiting, like there wasn't a lot of them until like the later half of the book. And I think I really struggled for the first part because I didn't realise how many chapters there was going to be in like her early life, and it basically, the entire book is her life with some present day chapters thrown in of, you know, Chase Andrews and the investigation surrounding his accidental death, his murder, who knows. Yeah, I didn't realize there was going to be so much about her life, like her growing up, like there's like when her family abandoned her, or like her gradual members of her family abandoned her, started with her mum, then her sisters, her brother, and then her dad disappeared, and then just her from like age of, I can't remember how old she is, she's very young, just her gradually learning to survive by herself, which was interesting, I guess. And you know, in the long run, it was sort of nice to see her journey. But that is like, I think that's what it was for me, was I didn't realize the book was more about her journey through life, and just learning the way of the land and becoming the intelligent person that she is from what she's learned from being out there. It took me a long time to read this book because I started it in the summer and it just sat at my bedside table, and every now and again I would pick it up. I think I got like 90 pages into it and I was just a bit like, oh my god, like her early years are just going on forever. And I mean, I'm not going to say it's crucial to the plot. It is the plot, to be honest, but it's not. There are some moments that are kind of like exciting, but it's not an exciting page turning novel for me personally. In books like these, I'm more interested in what's happened to the person who's dead, you know, and I'm getting excited for it. So it took me a while, and then there was one day, just the other day, 2 days ago, I was like, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna read this book and I'm gonna finish it. So I started and I read a good like 100 pages. So I finally got from Kaya being like a teenager, an early teen, to like late teens, I think it was. She was like 19-ish, sort of near present day but not quite present day. It got a little bit interesting then, I would say. Yeah, I mean, I will put out like a trigger warning for people who are like kind of sensitive to certain themes. There's like almost sexual assault a lot. One of the characters isn't the nicest and they're quite forceful on Kaya, but like it never gets too far, so it's not like R-word bad, but I got uncomfortable a few times. Even just like, and the gaslighting, is it gaslighting, or like the, you know, like that's not gaslighting, but you know when like you're leading someone on with like the promise of like, I'm gonna be with you kind of thing, like we're gonna be together, but really you have no intention of being with them, you're just saying this because you know you're gonna get what you want from them. What is that called? Words fail me always. So there was that. Me and this book, we had a weird relationship for most of it. It is beautifully written, if that's what you're into. And I'm really not. Like, I struggle a lot with books that are all about details and the land and stuff. Like, I don't need to know about the layout and stuff because I can't. I'm gonna be honest, if someone tells me that somebody like a lot of it was talking about her like in the water, because she's really good in like a little boat, and you know, she understands the land so well the older she gets. And like a lot of the time, my brain could not process the direction she was going in, and the different, like, and she was in like a lagoon, or she was in like a little current, or she was coming up the marsh, and I'm like, I have no idea what any, I know the terms, but I sort of at the same time don't really know what they mean. So I'm a bit like, I have no idea where we're going. We're in the water. We're on a boat right now. That's all I know. Where are we going in this boat? I don't know. Oh, we're at Jumping Shack. Okay, sound. I know where we are now. But like books like that are kind of beautifully written, but are very focused on like the environment and the detailing, I don't really care for it. Like I'm not that bothered by it. There was a lot of poetry written in the book, and for the majority of it I read it, but towards the end I sort of skimmed over them. Like, I am normally that person that, I know a lot of people skip them, but when you get like in books, especially like in fantasy books, when you get like songs or poems or whatever, like I know Game of Thrones was full of it, I do tend to read them, but they take me a while to read them because I read them slowly and then I start to gloss over them, and then before I know it, I'm just skipping them, and it's like, I really hope there's nothing important in here because it's gone. But then last night I picked it up and I'm gonna read it. I had like 100 pages, more than 100 pages, less than 100 pages. I think I had more than 100 pages, but around that kind of mark to go. I had like the last quarter of the book to go, and I was like, I'm gonna get this finished because I wanna start reading again, and I want to read more stuff, and I've got so many books on my shelf, and I'm very weird that I only read one book at a time. I just can't. I mean, I probably could cope with 2 books, but I've got it in my head that I can't read 2 books at one time, so I wanted to get it finished. So it got to the point of the trial, because if you know, I knew from seeing the trailer, one of the main things is that, you know, people think that she killed Chase. She gets arrested, and the trial is like the last quarter of the book, and obviously they're going back and forward with like the evidence, and I will admit I found it slightly unbelievable. Like, this lawyer came out of retirement to defend her, and then even the judge, I felt, was being very kind towards her, like in the way that, you know, he wasn't letting anything slide. Like, if people were kind of jeering from the stands or whatever, like, I know, like, I mean, I know that's how a courthouse is supposed to be, but the way the book described how everybody treated Kaya in this trial was just like, they treated her awful. And it would not have surprised me if the old judge just didn't give a shit. It felt slightly unbelievable. It did feel like, you know, they were leaning kind of biased towards her as the main character kind of thing. And then like they made this bit. One thing I will say about this book though, I don't know why it unsettled me so much, when it sort of is trying to be true to life of how things were like in that time. But I did not like the way the author spoke about black people. I just didn't. Like, even just the reference to like Colored Town, that's where the blacks live. The N-word got used a couple of times, and it's like, I understand when it's fictional and you're writing the N-word, just like writing it as it is to get the point across that someone's used it. I feel like you don't need to write the actual word, especially as a white woman or a white person being the author. I don't think you need to write the word. I would have known what you meant if you wrote something like so-and-so, like whoever the character was that said it. I don't remember what the situation was, but say something like, and something called whoever the N-slur, the N-word. I would have known. I would have known what you said, but the N-word didn't crop up, and I was a little bit like, oh, is this To Kill a Mockingbird? Is the N-word in that book? I feel like it is. I haven't read it in a long time. Even though I feel like it's true to life, and, you know, things were like this in that time where they had the separation, like it was Kaya had kind of befriended this couple, this man called Jumpin and his wife Mabel, and they had like this little shack, and, you know, they'd sort of taken care of her throughout the years, like in ways, and like helped her out a bit. And they were black people, and when it came to the trial, they went and sat with like a main character who's white, who were like sat in the stalls, and they were like sat behind Kaya, like at the trial, And it was the way that the author said something like, you know, they came and sat down and like, you know, like black people weren't supposed, like black people were supposed to be like up in the balconies, I think it was. But they came and sat in the stalls like to show their support for Kaya, and like nobody said anything. And I'm like, you're trying to tell me this town is so racist and backward, but they were okay with this? No one said nothing? Like, you sure? But yet other people are calling them the N-word, and it's just, that was another thing I felt like the court scene started to get a bit like biased, or just started to kind of switch up a bit, where the judge being kind of on her side a bit, not all the time, and this old man lawyer coming out of retirement to pro bono, I don't know what pro bono is, for her and her trial, and he did a grand ass job of defending her. He really did. And then also they let this coloured couple who were very much in support of her come and sit in the stalls with other white people, and you're telling me it was all okay? But then other times in the book it just felt incredibly racist. Okay, but that was just a minor detail. The trial was really good. The trial was what won me, and I sat thinking to myself, who killed Chase? Who did do it? Who did do it? Now, I had thoughts in my head. I thought it was one character, and then I thought it was another character. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody unless I decide to blurt it out and just, well, no, I'm not going to tell. But I had two characters, potentially a third, that I thought it was going to be. And I was like, this is like the first two especially. Well, one, not so much. There was one I was like, it's gonna be them. It's gotta be them. And then like the trial happens. I don't want to spoil the trial. But the trial happens. And then we get to like the last few chapters, which were quite nice, and everything was just, you know, everything was just happening. You know, it was like winding down, and we were getting to like the last few pages, and I'm like, wait a damn minute, because we had a bit of a time jump, but not really like a time jump as such, but more of like the chapters were progressing, being like, as the years went on, this happened, that happened, and then I got to like the last couple pages, and then you found out who it was, and I was like, oh, it actually took me by surprise. I can't believe, normally I'm so on it with like mysteries and figuring out who did what, but this took me by surprise. I did not see it coming. I was like, oh my god. So I feel like the ending and just that little surprise at the end was what saved the book for me. From the trial, the court, all the court stuff, so like the last quarter of the book really like brought it around for me. Like I started getting invested, because it was fully like time had caught up. So for the majority of the book, it's like in between present day, figuring out like the police are trying to figure out what happened to Chase, and then it's like the run up of Kaya's life, and you know, that's fine, but it was quite slow paced and not really too much going on. Like there were some moments, but like it wasn't really that like action packed or anything really going on that, you know, kept me interested a bit, but I also would get slightly bored, and that's why I think I stopped reading it for so long. But then that last part, when we finally like sort of time caught up on itself, and we were at court, and like you were finding out stuff, you were finding out what Kaya was up to and the run up to Chase being killed and all the stuff, and I was genuinely starting to think this guy actually died accidentally. I genuinely was like, what if it was an accident? But yeah, like that last part really saved the book, and even just the ending saved the book for me. Like I've put this, I don't know what I would have ranked this before, maybe like a 3-star, because for me a 3-star is like, it's okay, it's just okay. It's not awful, but it's okay. But I think now I'm giving it 4 stars. I can't bring myself to give it 5 stars because it wasn't perfect. It was a slow burner. I mean, I liked the character of Kaya. I liked the other characters, and like just hearing about her like exploring the land and all that, but at the same time it just wasn't enough for me. I think books like this I struggle with because I'm all about the action. I'm all about the mystery. I want to know what's going down. So yeah, it was a bit the ending saved it. So it's getting a 4 stars. I'm giving Where the Crawdads Sings 4 stars. And honestly, if you're maybe not as into like hardcore thrillers, mysteries that the entire plot is just what happened, it's a good book. It's quite well detailed. It is beautifully written. It's an interesting mystery. It's not really. He fell off a tower. Or was he pushed? Oh. There are a few, like I say, some sort of sensitive events throughout it. And then there's the racism. I really don't think modern novels, I mean any novels to be perfectly honest, but I really don't think modern novels need the N-word in them. The actual word. You can deliver your point without saying it. Because typing it out sort of is the equivalent of you saying it out loud. You know what I mean? Like imagine if you were narrating your own audiobook and you couldn't say that part because you can't say that word. So why put it in your novel? Do you know what I mean? There were other times where I just didn't like the way, I don't know, I just didn't like the way it referenced to black people. They weren't a big, no, I mean, I'm not going to say they weren't a big part of the plot because Jumpin and Mabel were quite important characters to Kaya. So like they were the two most important ones, and like she was always at Jumpin's shack. But apart from that, like it wasn't black people, the black community weren't a big part of the book. So I just hated the references to like Colour Town where the black people live. And I'm like, oh, I didn't like it. It felt unnecessary. It felt like just throwing it in there for the sake of throwing it in there. You know, you could mention Jumpin and Mabel and their little shack being like, you know, nearby to her, and like I think the whole point was like Kaya lived near, like, so there was the town, and then there was like Colored Town, and then like Kaya, but she always ventured into the town, like the Barclay Cove. Like she wasn't going into like Colored Town. So I don't know why, it kind of I just didn't like it. I just feel like nowadays, even though that's how things were in the 60s, you don't have to report on it. Know what I mean? I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. It just felt like kind of mild racism just for the sake of it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I just don't like the way that they were referred to. Like they were referred to the way that one would refer to them in the 60s. And that maybe would have been different if this was like a first person point of view story, but it wasn't. It was like third person. You know, you were mostly in like Kaya's mind, but then you also, it sort of jumped about that, you know, you were sort of in other people's perspectives a little bit. If it was first person and that was how Kaya felt, or how other people felt, then okay, fair enough. But it was third person, so you're sort of looking into their minds. But there were times like it was the way they were described, just in like along with the scenery, and just describing how like things were set out. Like that's like feels like the narrator telling you these things. So it felt unnecessary. But maybe I'm just thinking too much into it. I just remember at the time when I first read it, quite early on in the book, I was like, oh, okay. Well, anyway, so yeah, this is my very brief review of Where the Crawdads Sings. I recommend it, I guess. There are definitely people that won't. I think most people will enjoy it, to be honest. It's just me being picky, as always. So I hope you enjoyed this little review. I feel like I didn't really touch upon too much, but oh well. Oh my goodness, I've been sitting on my hand. Look at, oh my god. I've been like sitting cross-legged on it. Well, anyway, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video, whatever that may be. Bye.